Ethan never planned to buy a storage unit. He wasn't a collector, a reseller, or one of those people who believed every abandoned locker hid treasure. He was just there because his friend canceled at the last minute, and Ethan hated wasting a Saturday. The auction yard in Arizona was dusty and quiet, filled with rows of metal doors baked under the sun. Most of the bidders were regulars, laughing and joking like this was a game they already knew how to win. Ethan stood near the back, hands in his pockets, watching units open and close like mouths revealing secrets that were rarely worth much. When Unit 317 rolled up, there wasn't much excitement. No flashy furniture, no visible electronics, no obvious profit. Just plain cardboard boxes stacked neatly, a small metal shelf, and a plastic container sealed with black tape. People lost interest quickly. The auctioneer started low. No one raised a hand. Almost without thinking, Ethan bid. $400. Silence. The hammer dropped. He felt a strange mix of regret and curiosity as the crowd moved on. $400 wasn't nothing to him. Still, something about how organized the unit looked bothered him. Most abandoned units were messy, rushed, emotional. This one felt deliberate. Later that afternoon, Ethan returned alone. He cut the lock and slid the door open fully this time. The air inside smelled dry, clean, almost sterile. Every box was labeled in black marker, written carefully, evenly. Dates, locations, short phrases that meant nothing at first glance. He lifted one box and felt its weight. Too heavy for clothes, too balanced for junk. Inside were photo albums. Not random photos, sequential ones. The first album showed a small apartment kitchen. Morning light. A half-filled coffee mug on the counter. Ethan paused. The mug was identical to his. The chip on the rim was in the same place. He flipped the page. A living room couch. A window with blinds bent slightly downward on the left side. His couch. His window. A cold sensation crawled up his arms. He told himself it was coincidence. Cheap apartments all looked the same. Mass-produced furniture. Common layouts. He closed the album and reached for another box. This one contained hard drives. Each drive was wrapped carefully, labeled with dates that extended months into the future. That alone made his stomach tighten. He checked one label again, convinced he misread it. The date was real. It hadn't happened yet. At the bottom of the box was a smaller package. One word written clearly on top. Ethan. His first reaction was laughter. Sharp, nervous laughter that echoed too loudly in the empty unit. Someone was messing with him. A prank. An elaborate coincidence. That had to be it. Still, his hands shook as he carried everything to his car. At home, he paced for nearly an hour before touching the hard drives again. Logic fought fear. Curiosity won. He plugged one drive into his laptop. The file opened immediately, as if it had been waiting. The video showed a man asleep in bed, shot from a corner angle near the ceiling. The room was dark except for the glow of a digital clock. The numbers matched the time on Ethan's phone. The man shifted slightly. It was him. Same face. Same faint scar near the eyebrow he got as a teenager. Same uneven breathing pattern he never noticed until now. Ethan slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Minutes passed before he opened it again. The timestamp said tomorrow. The video continued. It showed the man waking up, spilling coffee on the counter, muttering under his breath. It showed him checking his phone, missing a call, then leaving the apartment in a hurry. None of it had happened yet. Ethan sat back, dizzy. Someone had recreated his life with terrifying precision, or worse. They hadn't recreated anything at all. He didn't sleep that night. He sat on the couch watching the dark, listening to every sound his apartment made, wondering how long he had been watched and whether buying that storage unit was a mistake he had already made before. And deep down, beneath the fear, one thought refused to leave his mind. If this was real, then whatever was coming next had already been decided. The next morning, Ethan couldn't bring himself to go outside. Every shadow in his apartment seemed longer, every sound louder than usual. He tried to tell himself it was coincidence, paranoia, or maybe even a bad dream. But when he checked the hard drives again, the images and videos remained there, unchanged, each one showing a moment in his life that hadn't happened yet but was so precise it left no room for doubt. He noticed details he never paid attention to before. the way his hands trembled while reaching for the coffee mug, the angle at which he left the apartment door slightly ajar, the tiny stain on his shirt that hadn't appeared yet but already existed on the screen. Each frame felt like a mirror of a life he hadn't lived, yet somehow already had. Fear twisted inside him, but curiosity pushed harder. He had to know how deep it went. Ethan spent the day meticulously opening each box, scanning each label, and organizing them on his table. Photos, videos, journals, and electronic files. The organization was precise, almost obsessively so, and it bothered him that someone, or something, knew the smallest details of his life. The strange part was that the items weren't random. Every image, every note, every drive seemed like it was meant to lead him to something, a final discovery that he wasn't ready for. As he continued, he found another package tucked beneath the last few boxes, small and light, with only a single word on the label: live. His heart skipped a beat. The letters were bold, written in black ink, the same handwriting as on the Ethan box. He hesitated but finally opened it. Inside was a camera, small, old-fashioned, and surprisingly functional. The lens faced upward, and when he touched it, the recording light blinked on. The feed showed a live video of his own apartment, and he realized with a jolt that he was being watched right now. Every movement, every thought, every breath was visible through this small device. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He looked around frantically, half expecting to see someone in the room, someone hiding and observing. But there was no one. Just his apartment, empty and silent. Panic clawed at him, but he couldn't stop himself from watching. The live feed showed Ethan standing in his kitchen, staring at the very same camera he was holding, mirroring his movements perfectly. He tried moving quickly to another room, but the camera followed him as if it had eyes everywhere. The feeds were multiple, layered, covering every angle, every detail of his apartment. The realization that someone, or something, had been not only recording him but also predicting his actions chilled him to the core. He could no longer tell if this was a prank, a warning, or a glimpse of something far beyond comprehension. He wanted to destroy the camera, smash it, unplug it, but a voice inside him whispered to wait, to watch, to understand. Ethan spent hours observing, connecting the patterns. Each recording, each image, each journal entry led to another discovery, a hidden clue buried within his own life. He noticed small anomalies, things that didn't make sense at first. A date that had passed showed future events. A note referencing a conversation he hadn't had yet. A video showing him making decisions he hadn't consciously made. Slowly, a terrifying realization emerged. The storage unit didn't just contain items. It contained his life mapped out, minute by minute, day by day, including choices he had not yet made. He felt as though the walls were closing in, as if his entire existence had been pre-recorded, pre-scripted, and someone else was watching him like an experiment. By evening, exhaustion overtook him, but he could not sleep. The thought of tomorrow, of the events yet to unfold, was unbearable. Every instinct screamed to flee, to abandon the unit, to delete everything and pretend this had never happened. But part of him knew that wasn't possible. Whoever, or whatever, had orchestrated this had a purpose, a reason for Ethan to witness it, and ignoring it might be worse than any possible confrontation. He realized he had to engage, to follow the trail of clues, to uncover the truth behind the storage unit and the life that mirrored his own. Every fear, every doubt, every rational thought faded beneath the weight of an even greater question. If his life could be seen in advance, if it could be predicted so precisely, then what part of it was really his own? Hours passed in tense silence. Ethan moved from box to box, photo to journal, drive to hard drive, and slowly began noticing a subtle pattern. The recordings weren't random. They built upon one another. Decisions led to consequences, actions triggered reactions, and the narrative seemed to culminate in a single, unavoidable event. A final message, a warning perhaps, or an instruction. And at that point, with his mind racing and adrenaline coursing, Ethan realized the most horrifying possibility of all. The storage unit didn't just show his life, it controlled it. Every choice he had thought was free might already have been determined, mapped, and recorded for someone else to observe. And with that thought, he knew he had crossed a line. There was no turning back. Every moment from now on, every heartbeat, every breath, would be measured, mirrored, and perhaps manipulated. Ethan could feel his mind fraying. Every rational thought he had once relied on seemed meaningless now. The storage unit, the hard drives, the photos, the journals, they weren't just a collection of objects. They were a map of his life, and perhaps a map of a future he was powerless to change. Every time he touched a new item, a fresh revelation struck him like lightning. A video showed him leaving his apartment to make a mundane purchase, but the delivery of a small package would trigger events that would spiral far beyond ordinary comprehension. A journal entry described an encounter with a stranger he hadn't yet met, predicting the exact words he would speak. Each detail was flawless, precise, and terrifying. Ethan realized that ignoring it wouldn't protect him. The path was laid out, whether he liked it or not. He tried to leave. He tried to convince himself that walking away from the storage unit, abandoning the drives and boxes, would end the nightmare. But the pull was magnetic. Each object seemed to call to him, whispering promises of understanding, explanations, or perhaps even salvation. The more he tried to resist, the more his own life seemed to reel out of control. Small incidents began happening around him, subtle coincidences that mirrored what he had seen on the drives. He spilled coffee exactly as shown. He missed a phone call just like the video had predicted. He moved through his day with the eerie sensation that someone else was guiding his hands, his thoughts, his very actions. Each repetition was a reminder that time itself had become a loop, and the storage unit was the mechanism controlling it. Hours stretched into a disorienting blur. The live feed from the camera continued to display his own apartment, echoing every movement, every expression. He felt watched from every angle, and the sensation of eyes on him was so strong it became almost physical. His own reflection in the mirror felt alien, distorted. The videos weren't just recordings, they were a script, and he was the actor performing for an audience that existed outside reality. But who or what was watching? That question clawed at him relentlessly. Every logical explanation crumbled under the weight of the evidence. No prank, no coincidence, no human observer could orchestrate something so impossibly intricate. And yet, the proof was in front of him, undeniable. In desperation, he examined the final folder labeled, "Last Day." His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside were sequences of photos, videos, and messages that built toward a single event, an unavoidable conclusion. The images showed him approaching the storage unit at night, unlocking the door, and confronting something he had never seen. A figure, shadowy and indistinct, stood at the far end of the unit. In the videos, the figure turned toward the camera slowly, and although he couldn't see a face clearly, the presence was suffocating, commanding, inhumanly calm. Every instinct screamed at Ethan to stop, to leave the unit behind and forget it ever existed. But he was already too deep. He knew that ignoring the sequence would have consequences worse than confronting them. The inevitability was absolute. The night fell, and he found himself at the storage unit again. He carried the camera, the drives, and the journals, as if their weight had been fused with his own body. The air was cold, biting, carrying a silence that pressed against his eardrums. He unlocked the door, and nothing looked different, except it did. Shadows seemed longer, edges sharper, and the familiar arrangement of boxes somehow unfamiliar, distorted. He placed the camera on a shelf and turned it on. The live feed immediately displayed the same room he was in, but the angle was wrong, impossible. It showed someone else standing behind him, watching. His heart slammed against his chest. He spun around. There was no one, only his own breath, visible in the cold air. Then the drives began playing automatically, a sequence he hadn't activated. Videos of himself emerged, repeating moments he had lived that day. Each clip led to the next, each more precise and horrifying than the one before. And finally, the last video showed him sitting in front of the camera he had placed, looking into the lens. He was speaking, whispering the exact words he hadn't yet said aloud, warning someone, or perhaps himself. The figure from the "Last Day" footage appeared behind him, featureless, calm, observing. A single phrase appeared in text across the screen: "If you are here, it is too late." His stomach sank, nausea overwhelming him. He realized that the storage unit was never about discovery or curiosity. It was a test, a trap, and he had crossed the threshold. The silence returned. Ethan backed away, trembling, but the cameras continued to record. And then, something impossible happened. The figure from the video appeared in the real room, subtle at first, a shadow moving against the wall, impossible angles. The chill in the air deepened. He screamed, ran toward the door, but the lock clicked shut on its own. Every exit seemed to vanish, every familiar route blocked. His own apartment, the storage unit, the entire environment felt unreal, as if he had stepped into a mirrored version of his life that he had only glimpsed on the drives. The figure spoke, not with words, but through images, emotions, and memories, pushing understanding directly into his mind. Ethan realized with a frozen heart that he had never owned his life, never truly controlled anything. Every choice, every moment, every heartbeat had been observed, predicted, and perhaps guided. And now, he was fully inside the system, part of the recording, and there was no escape. When morning came, the storage unit stood silent and empty. No trace of Ethan remained except the camera, quietly blinking as if waiting for someone else to arrive, someone else curious enough, bold enough, or foolish enough to uncover what should have remained forgotten. Somewhere in the world, the sequence would repeat, another life mirrored, another victim caught in the web of inevitability, and the storage unit waited patiently for the next discovery, perfectly precise, perfectly unavoidable.